Welcome back to the 2022 Reimagining Public Safety Forum. I'm your moderator, Alise Davis, and my pronouns are she, her. Just a reminder, this forum will unapologetically center Black issues. Let's welcome our candidates.
Hi, I'm Dale Hardt, and I'm running for Commissioner number 3, and my pronoun is me. Describe myself for the visually impaired. Okay, I am old, 62. I'm white and good looking. I have shoulder-length brown hair, bright hazel eyes, and a happy smile most of the time. Okay, I'm running for this office because the people need to have a clear voice this time to get things done. We need to have a uniformity, and I think the only way we're going to get that is if somebody goes in there with a good plan, and I got it. Why do I think I can win? Well, let me tell you a joke, and maybe you'll understand. How can you tell when Portland is in deep shit? The mayor comes out and extends a humanitarian crisis 3 more years, then goes back to business as usual. That's why I think I can win. I don't think people want to put up with this any longer. Thank you very much, and I'm here if you need me, Portland.
Hi, my name is Chad Leisey, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I am 6 foot tall, 205-pound, broad-chested white male. I'm wearing blue jeans, brown cowboy boots, blue button-up shirt with a gray pullover. I'm running for city commissioner because the city of Portland has a communication issue, and they're not willing to work. Don't appear to be willing to work together. I strongly believe we need somebody that will be willing to bring community members together, listen to their ideas, come up with an action plan, and achieve the goals. Why do I think I can win? I can tell you why I would like to win, because I'm great at bringing people together and organizing.
Good morning. I'm Joanne Hardesty. I use she, her pronouns. I'm wearing a lime green dress, multicolored jacket, and I am chocolate brown with dreads. I am pleased to be your Portland City Commissioner, position 3, and I ran because I thought we could do better. I thought we could create a community that was equitable and fair. In my 3 years in office, I've had the privilege of working with community to create the Portland Street Response, a non-emergency response to 911 calls, to create the first of its kind police accountability measure that 82% of Portlanders supported, that will create a new independent police oversight board. In addition to that, we've passed legislation like banning fireworks, because guess what? We're in a climate crisis, and I've been protecting the Portland Clean Energy Fund since my first day at City Hall. There's a lot more work to do, and with your vote on May 17th, I'll continue to serve as the working person's city commissioner. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Let's just do a quick reminder. This forum will unapologetically center Black issues. Let's get to know the candidates. Will you say your name and pronoun?
Hi, I'm Dale, and my pronoun is me.
Thank you.
Cheers, I'm Chad Leisey. My pronouns are he, him, his.
Thank you.
Hi, Joanne Hardesty, she, her, hers.
Thank you all so much. So before we dive into some questions, I'm gonna let you know the format. I am gonna ask the questions for 2 minutes. I'm gonna keep myself on time, it's gonna be great. You all will have 3 minutes each to respond. Afterwards, we'll have about 4 minutes for some open dialogue, so some closing thoughts. And don't worry about the time, I will keep you all going. And let's get into it. Okay. So question 1. In 2020, thousands of people marched in protest in the city of Portland demanding racial justice. Some protesters called for police reform. Some called for defunding to drastically shrink the size of the police budget, while others called for defunding to complete abolition. Nearly 2 years later, elected officials still think of police response when they hear the phrase public safety. But this definition is too narrow. We also know that policing isn't crime prevention, it's reactionary response to crime. My question to all of you, what is your definition of community safety? What are your plans to reimagine public safety and create a city that provides vital services such as housing, healthcare, parks, and equitable access to food to communities that need them in effective, equitable, and sustainable ways? I'm gonna pass it to you first, Dale.
Okay. Well, I think that with the police issue, we should never have taken away the money from the police. I think it's important that we realize that from the days of the Wild Wild West, there have been criminals, and there's going to continue to be criminals. And the criminals have guns, and the criminals are dangerous. And so we have to acknowledge that there is a place for the police. But it doesn't have to be as big as it is right now. It's gotten too big, and it's the primary resource that we always call upon. What they're doing now with the community policing, sending unarmed rangers and these other people, that's the direction we need to go for. But not by eliminating the police yet, because we need them right now, because as you can see, the crime has gone crazy. And this is all wonderful stuff that we're doing right now, but it should have been done after we reached a state of being crime at least controlled. But we're not even in the running to have crime controlled at this time. So it's not the time for community policing. This is a time for real police to be out there doing their job.
Thank you. I have a quick follow-up for you. What conditions do you think need to be in place to actively prevent crime that doesn't require police intervention?
I have always been a really big supporter of the neighborhood watch. I think we need to know our neighbors. I know most of mine. I've picked up on that program that the city started with the trash. And I go around and I pick it up, and I've met so many people just walking around our neighborhood picking up trash. And I think right now that we don't have a police force to call on for help. And right now, sitting in this room, it's real easy to just talk about it. But when that door gets kicked in the middle of the night in your house, and you're calling for somebody and they're busy, what are you going to do? Can you defend yourself? If everyone out there cannot personally defend their home and property and their children, then we need police. And we have to acknowledge that until crime is under control. Right now, the streets of Portland are not safe, and we need force to make it safe.
Thank you so much for your response. Same question to you, Chad. I'm going to read it again for you. What is your definition of community safety? What are your plans to reimagine public safety and create a city that provides vital services such as housing, healthcare, parks, and equitable access to food to communities that need them in effective, equitable, and sustainable ways?
My definition of community safety to me is everybody is entitled to and should be able to walk streets anywhere within Portland and feel safe and comfortable. Currently, I don't feel, even as a large male, I feel uncomfortable walking around downtown. Let alone I can't imagine a small single person wandering the streets. Portland's become a dangerous place, sadly. To solve it, we need a lot of community outreach within all of our departments, our police department, all of we have so many great groups throughout the city that are volunteers, and I feel like they're all scattered apart, so I feel as a commissioner, and as all the commissioners have a responsibility to the public to bring all these wonderful groups together. Come up with plans, and let's work as a team, You're a lot more effective as a role as a team, versus 100 different people doing different things. So communication, whether it's relationships, business, communication is #1 key to success in anything. And I feel like that's a good start where we need to go.
I have a follow-up question for you. What conditions do you think need to be in place to actively prevent crime that doesn't require police intervention?
Going back to communication, I believe there's a lack of communication within the commission. We need to have a lot more active roles within the community and making people feel comfortable. I'm totally against taking away from the police departments. No defunding or anything like that. We need more trained officers out there on the streets, like taking psychiatrists, hiring them onto a different branch of the police department, and having the ongoing education and everything that's required to build relationships throughout the community. The best way to prevent crimes from happening is building relations, a trust. Yeah, I mean, communication is number one.
Thank you so much. I'm going to have you expand upon that in a little bit. For my second question, I'm going to go to my left, Commissioner. I'm going to repeat it one more time. What is your definition of community safety? And what are your plans to reimagine public safety that creates a city that provides vital services such as housing, healthcare, parks, and equitable access to food to communities that need them in effective, equitable, and sustainable ways?
Thank you so much for that question. And I think the pandemic has actually highlighted that we don't all experience the city in the same way. What the pandemic taught us is that Black, Indigenous, Latinx communities were hit hardest. They had a more severe impact. COVID, the economic collapse, et cetera, et cetera. And what we know is it's going to take them much longer to recover. They haven't even started the road to recovery. Community safety to me means that regardless of your socioeconomic status, your race, your immigration status, you can have your needs met in your community wherever you go. It means when you call for help, you don't have to wonder whether the help will kill you or whether the help will exacerbate the problem that you're confronted with. Community safety looks a lot different depending upon who you're talking to. Most people I know do not feel safer with armed people showing up. That's why I created a Portland Street Response, so that people could be confident when they called 911, they would get compassionate, empathetic care. And I will tell you, 50% of the calls to 911 are for unwanted people. What does unwanted people look like? Well, they look like you and I. They look like people sleeping on a bench or sleeping in a tent. And no one should be unwanted in the city of Portland. We should be trying to engage everyone so they have a quality of life. And your income should not determine your zip code. But today, with the cost of living at median family income for a family of four, $96,900. How many people are cleaning up hotel rooms? How many people working in music venues, sports venues, restaurants can afford to live in the city of Portland? The number one reason why we have so many people on our street is it costs too damn much to live in the city of Portland. And until we address that, until we use our power of eminent domain, maybe and start foreclosing on these overpriced apartment and commercial buildings, until we start actually doing an audit of the 14,000 vacant apartments that no one that lives here today can afford to live in, until we start land banking the land we already own, because the biggest cost is land, why are we selling it to private investors and then begging for a public benefit? I mean, I don't know what affordable looks like in the Ritz-Carlton, but they have just said, nope, sorry, we said we were going to do it, but we're not going to do it. So the issues are intertwined, but it's about equity, fairness, and making sure that all of us have an equal opportunity. That's what community safety looks like. You know your neighbor, right? You're not calling the police on your neighbor because you know him.
Thank you. We have a few seconds left. I want to just follow up. You expanded upon it a little bit, or mentioned a little bit earlier, but what are the conditions that you believe need to be in place to actively prevent crime that doesn't require police intervention?
Give you a great example of a project I did in Mountain Scott neighborhood, right? Got a lot of ridicule on social media about slowing down traffic, because what we heard was that cars that were involved in shootings were speeding through the neighborhood, and the neighbors were terrified, right? And it called everybody they could think of calling, and I finally called my office. Would you guys work with us? Well, sure, right? Now remember, I have 7 staff, including me, but we went and met with the neighbors, and they said, well, we think if we slow down traffic, if we could just do a temporary traffic slowdown, we think we could make a big difference in this. I said, okay, let's try it, right? I'm not stuck in the way the city has always done business, so I'm always up for, let's try something different, right? And see if it works. I didn't know if it would work or not, right? But promising practices says that 63% reduction in gun violence in that community as compared to the rest of the city of Portland. So I think we're on to something, and here's what I know. The community knows how to stop the violence in their community, right? And if we, government, work with community, we can solve this problem together. Right? Police won't solve it. The police have never solved these kind of problems, right? It takes community to solve these problems because we know where the violence is coming from. And let me just end by saying domestic violence was up over 400% during COVID. we don't hear people coming up with a response to how are we going to address domestic violence. Child care. We didn't have child abuse, but what we know is that children were still being abused, and that's actually showing up now as kids are back in school, right? So we'd love to have a one-size-fits-all solution to violence and what causes violence, right? But the reality is that anytime an economic downturn happens, violence is created all over communities. So we have to have different approaches to different types of violence and not assume that we have a one-size-fits-all solution.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do some follow-ups. We went a little bit over, so I'm going to have you do a quick. No, you're fine. We have to do a quick 30 seconds in, but you got some bars for us. I'm going to go to Dale. Just a quick 2 minutes. Do you want to tell us a little bit more and respond to anything that you've heard at the table?
Well, I think what Joanne is doing is correct. All the little things like the barrels is all a deterrent. And the more deterrence you have, the less crime you have. Right now, Portland has accidentally gone the opposite way. We're even announcing that certain crimes will not be pursued. Theft, property theft. So if I just walk in somebody's yard and take their lawnmower, they can call the police and then they're going to be told to go file a police report. So the criminals are not stupid. They take advantage of this. And that's why we have such a high crime right now, is that we've said we're not going to prosecute people. The crooks know that you can go ahead and break somebody's door, go to jail, and in 12 hours be back out to do it again. So where's the deterrent? There isn't one. And as long as there isn't one, people are going to take advantage of the city. And it's going to get worse because we're allowing too much. Right now, the Portland police can do one thing and one thing only, and that's gun violence. And it's a miracle that they can even keep up with that at the rate it's happening.
Do you think they're doing a good job on gun violence?
No. Good. But I don't know who can, and I don't think any of us can run in and apprehend an armed criminal. So I think we got a real problem here that needs, like Joanne said, we need to go in more than one direction. One direction alone is not going to get us where we're going.
Thank you. I feel the passion at this table. I just want to name, like, all the vibes are great. I'm going to kick it to you for a quick 2 minutes, too, to give some follow-up thoughts to this question.
Yeah, there's like both of them have been going on. I think the issue stems just more beyond just the police department. I think that there's a lack in the city attorney's office and district attorney's office, for the county. And there's that lack of accountability. We need to start holding these people more responsible at a higher level as well, And if it takes us suing the county to force the county attorney to do his job, then it needs to be done. Things like this, this is exactly what I'm all about. Like right here, where the four of us are together discussing. That's what it's really going to take to make a difference in Portland, is bring everybody together and discussing, because nobody has the right answer or simple answer, It takes a whole team of everybody feeding off of each other and learning from each other, and then taking the best ideas from that as a group, as a agreed upon group, I know it's hard to get to a point where everybody can agree on something, but just first steps, taking them steps to do this. This is wonderful. So.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to you for a quick minute back. Do you have some closing thoughts to this question?
I just wanted to defend the DA for just a moment. Not that Mike Smith needs defending, but I will say that the DA can only prosecute cases that have been thoroughly investigated and presented to them. And I also want to say, with 800 plus sworn officers, I expect them to do their job, which is to actually solve crime. And since 2010, it is really challenging to see what the 800 plus sworn officers do on a day-to-day basis. And that's what the DOJ is asking us to answer. With a staffing study, with a report on police activities in the summer of 2020, with the demand that we get a analysis of and hold supervisors accountable for the brutality, the 6,000 uses of force that Portland police officers have been found to be guilty of. So there's a lot of work that we have to do before we start pouring more money back into a broken institution. And ironically, there are 100 funded positions today for Portland Police Bureau that are already funded in their budget that they can't hire for. There's another 30 in the budget lockbox, and they just turned 30 positions back over to the city budget office that they weren't able to fill this past year, right? So I think the mayor is wrong when he wants us to keep pouring more money into a bureau that can't spend the money they already have.
Thank you for that. In 2020, some protesters were elected officials to reallocate $50 million in law enforcement funding elsewhere. The city council responded by cutting $15 million, and then an additional $12 million was cut due to pandemic-caused economic shortfalls. As a result, school resource officers, transit police, and gun violence reduction team were disbanded. In 2021, November in particular, the City Council unanimously passed the fall bump, which is the budget monitoring process. Whew, got that right. Which includes increasing the current $230 million of our police budget. So just again, our budget is $230 million by an additional $5.2 million. In a recently settled contract with the Portland Police Association, the city agreed to increase officer pay and benefits while committing, in spite of community demands, to hire even more police officers. So the question I have for all of you, and I'm going to kick it to Chad first, is what is your response to the 2021 November vote? And do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and reinvesting those dollars in non-police solutions to public safety?
No, I do not. I disagree. I do not think that cutting any of the Portland Police Bureau budget is a good idea in any way. So we took away $15 million. We see what's going on now, a year after they've taken that away, how much gun violence has gone up, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So I think we've proven to the community that when you take away from the police, this is what happens. You get more violence. Personally, I spent 8.5 years as a volunteer firefighter. And just recalling what the things that I seen, what I went through, I see young people killed in car accidents. I've seen people. I had a gentleman that was decapitated. Just being the first responder that goes to that situation, and the feelings and the emotions that you go through when you're put in that spot. We all should be thinking about the police department and all of our other first responders, like the situations that they are being forced to be put into. They gotta have some sort of wind down time and time for themselves, and we have to be able to offer better situations or more like mental help to our first responders. So pulling budgets away, that's what you're really doing, is you're pulling away from them for, the more you pull from them, the more overtime they have to work, and things like that, where you're taking that, you're keeping them in that bad mental state all the time, So I believe in funding more, so that way we can have more services for our first responders and stuff like that. Like I said, just trying to project yourself into their situation. If you're a police officer and you're working on a daily basis with criminals, you're going to get in that paranoid state and feel like you're always continuously around criminals, So like I said, having more funding and being able to separate and provide more services to our first responders and treating them with the respect that they deserve. I do know that I've made friends with a few police officers here in Portland, and the first thing they bring to my attention is that they feel like they're treated like dogs by the leaders of the city, and then let alone being treated horribly by the community, So I would think that putting more money into the bureaus for police and other first responders would be our first step.
I have a quick follow-up for you. I have a few more seconds left. I'm curious, does your analysis change at all, knowing that with those cuts that happened in 2020, it wasn't that we actually fired those police officers. So we didn't actually lose any of the force. Most of those positions that were cut were empty. They couldn't fill them prior to. So I'm curious, does that change at all, or you still are tying very clearly the violence that we're seeing to the budget?
Right, and you know, I think that we're losing police officers because of the way they're being treated. So if the city leaders are treating them like dogs and cutting them down and blaming them for everything that's going on, you're going to have more of them retire. You're going to have more of them quit. You're going to have new officers not coming to be hired here in Portland. So we as a city are pushing qualified officers, good officers away, and we're basically pushing away the good ones and pulling in the trash that shouldn't be on the force at all. You know what I mean? The racist bigots that we rarely get, you know? And then when we do get them, we're just adding to it, you know? We're like, their mental state is just out of control, resulting in the crimes that they're committing themselves.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. I'm going to pass it to Commissioner Hardesty. What is your response to the 2021 November vote? Do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and investing those dollars in non-police solutions to public safety?
What a great question. As you may know, I supported $6 million being invested in non-police related violence reduction programs in the last budget process, because what I know is that police alone do not stop violence from taking place. In addition to doing work with PBOT, I believe Portland Street Response is going to be a wonderful response to reduce violence on our streets in the community. I brought this because this is the current proposed police budget, and we're in the middle of the budget process right now. And when you look at what the police are asking for, they're asking for a small fortune. But what isn't reflected in this budget is the reality of where we are. And the reality of where we are is the DOJ is demanding that we do an audit of police actions in 2020, that we do an audit of supervisors and how they have lacked holding police accountable when they are aggressively over-policing certain communities. We also just hired a civilian training dean. For 20 years, I've been saying, if we're going to have community police officers, we need community and police training together. We can't train police as paramilitary occupiers and expect them to come into our community and sing Kumbaya with community members, right? And so the good news is that while we're doing this, I'm also helping with the RFP request for proposal right now for a truth and reconciliation process with the community and with the police. We cannot add people into this toxic environment that we have, that's our police bureau today, until we get that civilian training dean on board and review training curriculum, because you've all seen a slideshow where people were annoyed at 129. I was annoyed from 1 to 129, because what that slideshow showed is that all the bad people were black and brown and all the good people were white, right? And if we're still training police that way 30 years later, I have worked with 12 police chiefs and 6 police commissioners in my time, so I'm not new to this. I know what the police say as excuses, but I follow the facts. And as the DOJ has said, the facts tell us that we don't have a police force that treats everyone equally, and until we do that, I don't want to bring people into a toxic system. But I am doing a summer jobs program with first responder bureaus to bring 30 young people in and have them not pick a bureau, but rotate through all the first responder bureaus. I know at 16 or 17, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I don't want to force kids into a little box, but I want to expose them to these living wage employment opportunities while we're rebuilding a police force that actually we all trust and respect and will serve us all equally.
Thank you. I have a quick follow-up question for you. You talked quite a bit around that November vote, and thank you for that background about the settlement, the DOJ. And quickly, before I get to my question, do you have a second to tell folks and the viewers kind of what was that settlement?
Yes.
Just really brief, yeah.
Back in 2008, We invited the DOJ, the Albino Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, and I was part of that group, invited the DOJ to come to town and investigate what was happening to black men and boys at the hands of Portland police. You may remember Keaton Otis, Aaron Campbell, Kendra James. It was just a very short period of time where lots of black Portlanders were experiencing death at the hands of Portland police. So the DOJ came, they did an analysis, and they kind of did a bait and switch and actually addressed people with mental health issues, right? But we know today we still kill more people with mental health issues than we did prior to inviting the DOJ to come to town, which is why creating Portland Street Response was so important, that we just don't send on people, right? So the DOJ, because of the outrageous behavior of the Portland Police Bureau in the summer of 2020, has found us out of compliance, and so they have given us very specific things that as a city we must do, right? So even though the mayor is taking credit for the civilian training dean, it was the DOJ that's requiring it, yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
My last question for you really quickly, I might have missed it, so can you remind us that second part of the question? I'm guessing, but I don't want to make any assumptions. Do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and reinvesting? You talked about that history that you have done that, but in the future, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, right now we don't know what the ideal Portland police force looks like, right? But what we do know is now that we're hiring PS3s, public safety threes, unarmed people to work within the Portland Police Bureau. Now that we have the Portland Street Response, now that we have a pilot program in fire with the CHAT program, the Community Health Assessment Team, right? What we're doing is building other first responder options. And so as we are reforming Portland Police itself, these other things are getting up to scale, right? Like Portland Street Response and the Community Health Assessment Team. And as they get up to scale, as we get these reports that the DOJ require us to get, we'll be able to figure out what's the appropriate size of police force, right? The police like to say it's based on population. Well, that's kind of ludicrous because we don't drop police when people move, right? We don't say, okay, now that we got less population, let's just get less police, no? It should be based on what does the community need to feel safe, right? And right now what the community needs is compassionate, empathetic responders when they call for help.
Thank you so much. Okay, Dale, I'm going to go to you next. I'm going to repeat the question for you. What is your response to the 2021 November vote that increased that police budget I mentioned earlier? Do you support reducing the budget and force size of the Portland Police Bureau and reinvesting those dollars in non-police solutions to public safety?
Okay, to answer that one, that's really pretty easy. I think that in 2021, when they gave back the money, they did a good thing. I think that was the city council admitting that they'd made a mistake. And it's very important that that happens. As far as going forward and investing more money, I want to say no. I want to go with what Joanne is recommending. I do believe in the street response teams. I think we need to move away from the police. But I'm just questioning the timing because Portland is in a critical spot right now. And while I want Portland to be perfect, I'm not sure that we can just jump right in right now and just eliminate the police and go with our other ideas. So I think that the most important,
The police have not been eliminated.
Oh, I know.
Self-eliminated.
I know, but they've been reduced. And I think that before we did anything else with the police, before we take money, give money, anything we do, I think that we've put a person into that office as the police chief that lives in Portland, loves Portland, and knows what he's doing. And I think before any change should be made in our police officers, I think he should be the main voice at the table saying, this is what I need, this is why I need it. And explain it to the people because the politicians have got it so messed up that we don't trust the police anymore. But we should remember that 24/7, those officers will lay their lives down for each and every one of us. So I'm sorry that they have to be, because I would like a world where there was no violence. But that's not the world we live in. Guns are crazy right now. Kids have guns. Everybody has guns, and we have to address that. But I would like to see it go forward with whatever the police chief wants, and whatever he doesn't need, go straight into putting more nonviolent unarmed police people on the streets. That is critical. That is a deterrent. And that is all that Portland needs to lower the crime rate, is a deterrent. But when that's not there, the criminals are just wild and happy. There's never been a better day in Portland for the criminals. They can commit a crime, go to jail, and be out in 12 hours. That's not a deterrent. That's an open door to say, come to Portland and take what you want. We're good. As long as you don't hurt anybody, it's all okay. And the sad part is that even if we were to say, we're not going to do that anymore, we're going to arrest every one of them, we can't. So we're really in a very, very, very bad spot because we're in a problem that we just can't get out of right now today. And so as to the money that's been taken and given back, I think that you gave back some of it. So that's a good thing. But I think going forward, we need to get the chief to sit down and say, this is the way we need to go. This is what will support me the best, because until we get crime under control in Portland, it's not a place that anybody wants to live. And that has to be the main priority that everybody is focused on. That and the people that are living on our street. Nothing else should matter right now, nothing. And we need everybody involved. That means the police chief, the officers on the ground. And it's like Chad said, these officers, they're human beings. And the stress that they are under every single day out there, when they're in a police chase, your adrenaline's up. They make mistakes, but they're human beings. And they're risking their whole life every time they go out there, because that one lady that made a mistake, she pulled a gun instead of a taser. Who at this table can say it was not an honest mistake? And so she's going to go to prison forever. And it could have been an honest mistake. It shouldn't have happened. None of them should ever happen. But I'm saying that these are human beings, and we rely too much on them and expect too much. In a dangerous situation like when the cop got killed running into his own house, that's nobody's fault. It's the reality of crime and criminals. And there's going to be bad things that happen. And it's sad, but we have to move forward and say, we're not going to let that happen again. There used to be slavery in America. There's not slavery anymore. We do learn, and we make up for the mistakes that we've made. So as we move forward, I think we just need to look at new directions like the police response without guns. I believe 100% that we need more people on the street to deter the crime so it doesn't happen. Because Joanna's right. The police aren't there to stop the crime. They're there to deal with it once you've done it. And we got to stop it from happening before it's our stuff that's being stolen.
You know, I hear over and over and over again from community members, when they call the police for help, the police say, we've been defunded. We can't come because we don't have enough staff.
That's unacceptable.
It is unacceptable to me
Also
as
not
well.
true. We haven't actually got rid of.
Absolutely not true. We have over 800 sworn officers, and I continue to ask daily, what actually, and they say we only have 200 available for patrol. Well, I want to know what the other 600 do.
But we have like 560,000 people in Portland or something like that. Don't you think that number is grossly way under?
Well,
800 sworn officers to protect over 500,000 people?
Actually, it
Like,
has
come on.
nothing to do with the number of people who live in communities. There are communities with significantly more people with significantly less police. I will give you, oh gosh. The city will come back to me, but there is a perfect police force in this country, and it was created because they got the chance to start from scratch, right? And what you would see is very few of the officers are armed, and in fact, de-escalation training is the norm.
And I agree with that, having unarmed officers, okay? But when we're so, I feel like we're so understaffed that all this overtime that they're putting in, we're burning out officers.
Well, I do want to add another thing. We've always been understaffed for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And it's sometimes interesting that we are saying we're in the crisis that we're in now because we don't have enough police. But what about 2019? We didn't have enough police then. 2018, we didn't. Right. I mean, the settlement in 2014 clearly said we didn't, and it was a very different city. Whether you agree, like myself, that it's still we need to reimagine the entire thing, or not. But I do think there is something to being mindful that we've always been at a deficit of the amount. There's always been open seats, but there's something that you mentioned.
When
too.
I showed
Oh,
up
go,
in
please.
2019, sorry for cutting me
No, you're
off.
good.
When I showed up in 2019, those 50 positions have been carried over 5 years. The 44 that we cut, every budget, because that was the slush fund. That's how police got to buy the stuff that city council didn't support. That's how they got to support an over-bloated overtime budget. But you say we need more officers. Officers are still working for private industry in their uniform because the union, before I got there, the city council allowed the union to decide whether or not they could make extra money in their uniform. I didn't vote for that, but guess what? It's still in the union contract, right? So when you keep telling me the police need more money, no, they don't. They've always had enough money. The question is, how do we spend that money and whether we're getting a return on investment that we're supposed to get when we put that kind of money into a public servant's position.
But the more public servants you have, like the different groups you have, that's more, so you're separating everything farther out. Why not?
No,
why
actually-
Why not extending branches of the police bureau
Absolutely
itself?
not true. I
So
like
it's
the
all
effort.
ran under the police chief,
Well, no,
and
it's not.
there's a direction and control.
today.
Because right now there is no direction in Portland.
Today-
They're saying we're gonna come up with this group, and this group's gonna volunteer and do this,
Well, I can
and
tell you-
there's no direction.
I can
so
tell
it's
you what really
everywhere,
is
spread
happening.
out.
I can tell you what's happening, or you can tell me what you think is happening, and we can do both, right?
What I can see is,
well, let me just tell you,
my opinion is what I see.
We have a community safety director who is responsible for all the first responder bureaus now. His name is Mike Myers. I helped hire him, and he used to work for me.
Fire, right?
Yeah, he used to be my fire commissioner, and then he was my Bureau of Emergency Management commissioner. And I trust this guy to be a visionary thinker, which he's done all over the world, right? So it's not the police chief who is now leading the effort. It is someone who understands community safety. It's not just police. It is all the things that make a community safe.
Right, but right now we're talking about like right now. Right now it's not
Right
working.
now,
Nothing is working. Like everything we keep throwing stuff, we're just continuously just throwing money.
I
It's gonna go away because we throw
respectfully
money.
disagree.
Oh yeah.
And
And I respect that too.
No, I can understand
but
why you don't think it's working.
My view is coming from people throughout the community because I listen to members of the community,
do
which
I.
I feel the current commissioners don't listen to the community. I've tried reaching out to the commissioners' offices and heard nothing.
I did as well. I sent several letters and were totally ignored, which is why I'm here.
When the young girl was killed last summer downtown,
the
wait for
high school
food,
girl,
you know,
the
18
Grant
years
High School,
old,
yes.
and when the mayor comes out the next day, says we're going to have police officers downtown enforcing, have a presence, and 2 weeks later, we took some friends. I had a friend come from Dallas. We took him downtown. We stayed down there until 3 a.m. because we went to the bars and then we went to the food trucks. Didn't see one police officer till I got back to the Pearl District outside of our building. Yeah. So I called. I sent emails to all of the current commissioners and even the news outlets and the mayor, and didn't get one response back. And when I had mentioned in my email, I says, as a middle-aged white male, it's apparent to me that this is racism. If it was a little blonde white girl, there would have been so many police officers down throughout that entire area, and there still currently would be, So, but to get no response from anybody from the city,
Well,
that's unacceptable. Not even an automated email.
I will tell you that I never
no.
respond to chain letters because I believe when people write to me, they write to Commissioner Jo Ann Hardesty's office. When people send me a letter that's copied every news outlet, everybody in elected office.
But that puts you out of touch
everybody
from
in
what
elected.
the
No, it doesn't.
community-
I want to reel us back in a little. I want to reel us back in a little bit. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the back and forth. Oh yeah, I was enjoying it, but we got some few questions. We have some few questions. So I want to get us to our question number 3 because we touched it. But I do want for the folks kind of watching to do some research on a few things that we heard that we don't have time to dive into. The first is to dive into that DOJ settlement and learn a little bit more about the history of why that happened and particularly the disproportionate excessive force and over-policing on black folks. As someone who runs a black organization, I have to mention that. We also heard a little bit and name-dropped a little bit around slavery. Slavery has not ended. There is quite a lot of data to support that our prison system is still carrying on that thing. So I that tradition, I would recommend as well to do some research on the prison industrial complex, read some books, and do some background, because for some, they might believe that, but as a Black woman, I'm going to tell you that's not always the case for all of us. It's not true. So I want to bring us to the third question. This is a long one, so be with me. Be with me in the vibe. So we're going to talk about this ballot measure, y'all. So the People for Portland. The People for Portland, a political advocacy group funded by majority white business interests, recently filed paperwork to put an initiative on the November ballot in 3 metro area counties, requiring local government to direct existing tax dollars to fund emergency shelter beds and compel cities to enforce anti-camping laws. This ballot measure would redirect a bulk of the money from the Metro's 2020 homeless service measure towards emergency shelter, forcing people living on the streets to move into shelter space, likely traumatizing and many community members for whom shelters are a poor short-term solution and exposing vulnerable community members to harm. This measure will allow Metro residents to sue the government if they believe that the People for Portland measure is not being enforced. How would you, this is the question for you, how would you prevent excessive force on the houseless community? And how will you respond if and when similar ballot measures that harm houseless community members are being considered? The second part to that, what approaches would you take to provide a holistic? So when I say holistic, I'm thinking not only just physical, but also mental health, well-being, and housing for our houseless neighbors. Whew. That's a lot. I'm gonna remind you. Joe. So the first one is, how do you prevent excessive force on the houseless community and respond if and when a similar ballot measure like this, which from our perspective as Imagine Black, will harm the houseless community?
No question in
me
my
more.
mind that this will harm people who have already been traumatized over and over and over again. Let me just say that the People for Portland are people who are accustomed to buying city council seats, and because of the small donor campaign, they can no longer write $20,000 and $30,000 checks to their favorite city council candidate. So instead, they decided to hire some spin doctors to make the public mad. When I first heard they spent $500,000 in 3 months, I thought to myself, what could I have done if I had $500,000 to engage the public? Because here's what I know. Portlanders, when you give them something to do, they will do it. I would have actually used that $500,000 to actually tap into the best of Portland. How can you help? Right? Are you an empty nester? Do you have a room that we can have a family share with you, right? Can we create self-managed camps? Because we know self-managed camps have never had police interaction, right? Can we use land the government already owns and actually create these different housing options while we wait to build housing people can afford to live in? And I will say, if People for Portland really genuinely wanted to put people in housing, they would support my proposal to actually use our power of eminent domain and start foreclosing on all these overpriced apartment complexes that Portlanders cannot afford to live in. I don't know too many working people that have $5,000 to $7,000 to move into one of these 500 square foot, $2,000 a month apartments. And when people tell you they're building at 80% of MFI, what they mean is you need $70,000 to qualify for what they're calling an affordable unit. So we've been sold a bag of goods around what affordability looks like. When I first showed up, I went, affordable for who? And when I started hearing about really who it was affordable for, let's stop pretending we're building affordable housing. We're building worker housing, right, for professionals, but we're building nothing for people who are working $15 an hour jobs. In fact, you need $36 an hour to not be cost burdened to afford a place in the city of Portland. $36 an hour.
Remind me our minimum wage here?
Our minimum wage is now, what, $12 an hour? and change?
$14.25 right now.
Is it $14.25?
Yeah, it's been at the beginning of
Those
the year.
numbers don't align.
So $15 an hour is like the average salary for a worker today. So think about how many workers it would take to actually rent a studio apartment at the current cost.
Thank you. You're welcome. I'm going to pass it to you, Dale, to answer this question. I know we just heard from you a few minutes ago, but I'm going to repeat it again. How would you prevent excessive force on the houseless community, and how would you respond if and when these or similar ballot measures that harm houseless community are being considered?
Well, I have a plan right now, and anybody that wants to take a look at it can just send an empty email to pdxcontract@gmail.com. It's going to remove every camper from the street. And it's not going to remove them by going out there with the police force and marching them into a camp. What we're going to offer them is a space where you can camp legally and will not be bothered. It will not be a house. It will not be a mansion. It will be the same piece of land you might be laying on, except here you will not be bothered. Here we will support you 100%, and here we can get you from here into a house. But we cannot leave the people sleeping on the streets while we build houses for 3 more years. It's ridiculous. Today we need to get the people off the street. We can move them onto land that the city currently owns, and you ask a camper. There's a nice little place over here under a water tower. It's got electricity, water, and a dumpster and toilets. Would you rather stay on this street right here? Or could you get in the truck and we'll drive you over here and help you set up your tent where you won't be bothered again until we have a house for you? Because we have to, at some point, quit leaving the people behind. Plans are good, but not if they leave somebody sleeping on the street tonight. That plan sucks. So I'm just saying that there is a way to solve the problem right now. It's not pretty. We've gotten ourselves way too deep for any pretty answers. But I think that if you offer most of these homeless people a place, a camp where they can do their thing, they set it up the way they want, they tell us what we want, and each commissioner is going to own one of those camps. They are going to set it up, because we're not going to leave the mental health people behind either. One of the commissioners in my plan are going to have to accept responsibility for the mental health people. One will accept for the low income. One will accept for the drug addicts, because we cannot leave anybody behind, because what's going to happen is right now we're getting the good people that are living in cars and that just can't afford a house. We're getting them into houses because they got a job and everything. They're good. They can pass every loop except the money issue. And we're building houses and getting them into it. But what you're leaving behind is the mentally ill and the criminals, the drug addicts, that aren't going away. So when everybody that wanted a house is gone, you're going to open your eyes and say, oh my God, we have a problem here, because you're going to have crazy people everywhere and drug addicts that are just doing their own things, just having a party, stealing whatever they want, because everybody else is gone. They went into homes. But the drug addicts, he's not going. As long as they can't do their drugs in the shelters that we're giving them, they're not going to come. But that doesn't mean that we can ignore them. We need to pick a camp way out in the middle of nowhere that's got water, a toilet, and a dumpster, and a commissioner to oversee it and say, look, you guys, go out here, do whatever you want, except obey every law in the country. Other than that, I don't care what you're doing.
You on time. Thank you for your response. I do want to just say really quickly, if we can, as someone who supports the mental health community, please try not to call them crazy in the space. I know you had some passion. I know that wasn't your intention.
Yes,
but
I absolutely.
I do.
And I am mentally disabled by a judge, so I mean, I am one of those people.
You're one of those people,
so I understand.
We're not going to use it in the space, but I
Right.
appreciate your passion. I'm going to pass it to you to close us out for this question. How would you prevent excessive force on the houseless community, and how will you respond if and when these or similar ballot measures that harm the houseless community are being considered?
Now, I've got to kind of bounce it off of what Dale was saying. Yeah. I do believe that we do need a place for them to go, for the houseless people to go. And so on top of, they need to be able to get the services that they need, mental, job placement, methadone clinic. My impression is that, my idea is that we need some place where we can send people, like a housing community, a sheltered community with like a tiered housing program. So we can have something where there's tents, where they can set up their tents in their lots, and then they can move up into they have the box houses for $50,000. It's a full, complete house that comes together and unfolds, right? And it's like 300 or 400 square foot. those are cheap alternatives. Going back to the $2.5 billion we're collecting over the next 10 years, that's a lot of money. Just off those little box houses, that's 25,000 of those with $2.5 billion. But right now what we're doing, we're collecting the money in the city and then we're dispersing the $2.5 billion to the counties, right? And they're not working together, or they're saying, okay, we're working together, we're meeting every 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, BS. You need to be meeting once a week. You need to come up with a plan. You need to bring all the groups together of all the great organizations, come up with an actual game plan and then stick to that game plan. Make it easier for, I like Ideal's idea of like one concentrated area where all of the volunteer groups can come to and make the most effort when they're working as a team.
By virtue of being volunteer, you don't get to tell community members where they spend their time.
Right. I don't think that we should be letting the houseless just take over the streets. You're not going to let if you have a child that has their issues, you're not going to say, go ahead and set up a tent in a yard.
It is
that's
legal.
That's going to be unacceptable.
It is illegal to remove houseless people if you have nowhere for them to go.
Absolutely, and just so that
And the
is
U.S.
put to
Supreme
dead,
Court has
let's
ruled.
put that to dead, make it dead.
The Supreme Court has
The Supreme
ruled.
Court has changed this. The ruling has been revised several times by several courts. It never, ever said you could not remove a person from the street. It said you could
Appropriately
not
wrong.
make a law that
But
would
I
force
don't-
somebody off the street.
I do, and what I brought up was these facilities where they have methadone, they have job placement, they have all this other stuff. So a place for them to go, and then once you have that in place, 100% ban starting downtown on homeless tents.
Why just
you're
downtown?
How
about East Portland, that has no resources?
Start downtown, and then eventually you spread it out.
Why start downtown? There's
Because our economic, we
20
thrive
private security
off
firms.
of we thrive
we
off
don't.
of
downtown?
tourism.
No.
No,
we don't. Somebody does, but not us.
So we're running out of time here. I want to be mindful and respectful of the time. I appreciate y'all's response.
Yeah, and I guess we've been here a long time.
We've been here some time. Getting a little hot. You guys get a little hot. Need a little fan. I will say for the viewers, we're gonna throw some links to that Supreme Court case so we can all be on the same page here.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
I also do want to throw out and just remind folks that our budget is a moral document. And all of these great ideas that I heard, and I will say some of them I don't agree with, so I'm saying great in a loose word here, but all the ideas I heard today require funds. And as an organization that believes that we can do better, those funds could come from a lot of places. And I'm thinking about that last question of that extra $5.2 million. Not enough to do what we need, but those ideas cost some money. Let's think about how to fund it, and part of the commissioner's role is to think about that. Let's do it. We're going to talk about the Portland Violence Reduction Team. Okay, so let's go back to 2019. In 2019, Black people made up 52% of the Portland Gun Violence Reduction Team stops. 52% Black people. I don't know if y'all know how many Black people live in Portland, but at the time, 2019, when this happened, only 8% of Portland residents were Black, alone or a combination of another race. 52% were stopped out of all. 8% of the population. Those numbers don't align. In 2020, protesters called for City of Portland to defund this particular team. This is the response to multiple reports on over-policing and disproportionately targeting Black folks. The Portland Police Bureau has recently introduced a new team. From our analysis, it is the same team by a different name, called the Focus Intervention Team. They launched in February as a replacement to that gun violence reduction team I mentioned earlier, headed by the same leadership that led to disproportionately targeting Black Portlanders. So my question to you all, now that I set that stage, is knowing that the Portland Police Bureau's history of over-policing and disproportionately targeting Black Portlanders like myself, do you believe the Focus Intervention Team is the best approach to reduce gun violence here in Portland? Follow up to that, would you support removal to that team altogether? And if not, how would you ensure the team does not replicate harm for Black Portlanders as it previously did for that team I mentioned a little bit before? Whew. So I'm gonna pass it to you first, Dale. I'm gonna read the question one more time for you.
Okay.
Knowing Portland Police Bureau's history of over-policing and disproportionately targeting Black Portlanders, do you believe the Focus Intervention Team is the best approach to reduce gun violence here in Portland? I'm gonna keep going with the second part of this. Would you support a removal of this team altogether? If not, how would you ensure that this team does not replicate harm to Black Portlanders as it previously iterated with that team I mentioned a little bit earlier?
Well, this is a really good question. I really wish the chief was here to explain this, but I do believe that the focused intervention team is critical to the safety of Portland. They're focused on gun violence, which means that they're out in a neighborhood and they're talking to the people that are the gangbangers and stuff, and they talk to them and they get a feeling who's who runs this gang, who runs this one, who carries the guns. They get involved with the neighborhood so that they have information that a random officer just passing through the neighborhood won't have. So it enables them a better opportunity to know who's doing what in a neighborhood. And they have done bad things. The police, in the old days, there was the blue line, and they've done terrible things. But we're moving forward, and we need the focused intervention team. And you might say that it focuses too much on one color of people. And I don't know why I get stuck at this table right now, haven't answered this, but back when the Crips and Bloods were running the neighborhoods.
You're taking us there.
And North Portland was in the middle of it, the police had to have a team that specialized on going in there and controlling the violence, and they had to know who was who. And you only get that by being involved daily to daily with what's happening in the neighborhoods. And here's where it gets tricky. They were working in a neighborhood with Crips and Bloods were all black. And so when they're interacting with people, they're all black. So it's not their fault that they can't arrest a white person too.
You know, we have white supremacists here that are not called gang members. We don't call white supremacists gang members. Why is that? Why are you only talking about Crips and Bloods and you're not talking about the white supremacist, the white nationalists?
If you say white supremacist,
I will call them a gang.
I will call them a gang.
Let's reel it in. Let's reel it in for a second.
Yes, they are
no,
all
I want to say
terrorist agencies.
how do you define a gang?
A gang is a concerted group of people that are working together to accomplish whatever they're going for. If the Crips are selling drugs in this neighborhood and they want to keep this neighborhood and they're a gang, then all of them are part of it.
Kind of like police officers, they're all gangs.
Yes.
I mean, I want to re-listen for a second. So what I'm hearing is that you support this team. What I'm not hearing, we have about a minute left for you, is how would you ensure that this doesn't replicate harm to Black folks? And I do want to say something before you answer, and we'll keep your 1 minute time. How we define gangs is super important. When we keep defining them only as Black people, we're perpetuating stereotypes that actually are not true. But also, I want to say some of the things that you described can be done by other people without violence.
Absolutely.
And
there are
without
Mexican gangs too.
Ooh,
Very big nowadays.
I would say maybe don't call out the racists in this moment. I'm gonna help you out a little bit. Don't say it. Don't say it. But there are many people in organized groups. Who defines if they're violent or not? Who defines whether or not they need policing is usually the people in power. So I'm gonna ask you, my follow-up question is, how do you make sure that they don't replicate harm, this team that you support?
There is no guarantee. I wish I could. But I think it all comes down to the management of the police department and the commissioners. It's a matter of you guys making the right choice when you hire the chief. I would trust the current chief 100% to ensure that not one problem will happen with these people if he can stop it. But there's been other officers that had different feelings on how people should be handled and how to handle the crime. So I think it's a matter of, you can't ever guarantee anything. Everything can happen, but I think you have to trust in your police force. If you don't trust in them, then they're not going to, we have nothing. If we can't trust the police, then we should just abolish them completely and just deal with the criminals ourselves, because you have to trust them at some point.
I will say, as a black femme, I don't trust the police, and that's someone who has.
I'm white and I don't trust them.
But what I'm hearing from you is that you are saying the risk is worth it, essentially. Like, even though we might be harming, that it's still worth the risk.
No,
to
I'm
bring
not
this-
saying
okay,
that.
tell me how
I'm
you're
saying
not.
that the focus intervention team is a tool that the captain, the chief, can use to get personal with the criminals. These people are focused on going in there, talking to the criminal, not arresting them, just getting information that the Bureau can use to manage the violence in the city. It's just a tool. And it's just a matter of who wields the tool as to what happens with it.
Thank you for clarifying your position. I'm going to move us through some time because we got to get through it. I'm going to ask. I know we're in the part of it. Y'all are comfortable with each other now. Y'all ready to interject? We're going to keep us on track. So we're going to try to have some more narrow time for some candidates to speak.
You don't have to reread it.
Okay. You're
just
ready to
jump
go.
into it.
Tell me what you got. Chad.
Okay, I'll just jump in. I am right now. I'm gonna really tick off a mass majority of Portland by saying I've traveled all around the world, and Portland really truly is one of the most racist cities I've ever been to in my life. It's not just a racist city; it's a very sexist city and things like that. We have all this pretend wokeness or whatever going on. People. And this is going to sound really messed up, but I do feel like Portland is the type of place where you have people marching at Black Lives Matters movements during the day, and then at night they're going to their KKK meeting. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds funny, but it's really not a joke. It's really how I feel here. And I know anybody that agreed with me previous is going to disagree with me hard now. So that being said, we did to correct the issues that we have here. We almost need a whole rebranding of the whole community, and bringing everybody to building relationships and trust amongst each other and learning from our experiences and stuff like that. When I was on the fire department, every October we'd go to every single school and we'd visit every single classroom for Fire Prevention Month in October, right? And I believe what we would do in them situations, not only to educate children what to do in a fire, but we wear our suits and we'd wear oxygen masks because we look like scary aliens, The last thing we wanted is if there was a fire in our house, we come in, they hide from us because we look so scary. And the same thing with police departments. They most children, especially in communities of color, the only time they interact with police officers is during bad situations, continuously. And we need to steer away from that. We need to start building relationships of trust from a young age, and also, I feel like I went off topic.
No, you're
Okay.
good. I was just going to give you a time check and ask you really directly one more time. I'm going to do my
yeah.
thing. Do you support this team?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I don't. I think that there's much better ways it could be handled. And like I said, building them relationships and then also reprogramming people's minds, stopping somebody solely because they're black to check to see if they have a gun is BS,
Thank you for that. Okay, so for our last question, I'm going to pass it to you, Commissioner Hardesty. Go ahead.
Oh, I already know. You want to
go.
repeat
I'm
it?
not going to repeat it. You ready to go? Let's go.
Let me just say, I followed the Portland Gang Enforcement Team for 14 years, and the data was always the same. Less than 0.1% of anybody could be affiliated with any expectation of gang activity, right? So with over 50% of the stops for 14 years being of black folks, and the outcomes being 0.01% had any kind of gang involvement, clearly we had a dysfunctional team. The day I showed up at City Hall in January 2019, all of a sudden the gang enforcement team didn't exist. Then we had a gun violence reduction team.
Rebrand.
So when I asked the question, well, what new training have we had? What are the new analysis that you're doing, the new data you're collecting? They all looked at me like deer caught in a headlight, right? But I understand data, and what I know is if you're doing the same thing that you've always done, you're gonna get the outcomes you've always gotten. Now we have this FIT team, and let me just say, prior to Sam Adams joining the mayor's office, I had already put together an oversight board, because I know the community only has 3 questions. How many guns did you take off the street? What's the demographic breakdown? And how many cases are headed to the DA, right? So Sam Adams comes in and has all the new community members sign a confidentiality agreement so they can get information the community could care less about, right? Only 3 questions, really basic. I had put together a committee. I told them, we're gonna need you for 6 weeks because I don't wanna waste your time, right? Please come every week and answer those 3 questions. We'll know whether they've changed. Well, since Sam Adams has them signing a confidentiality agreement, nobody knows what the heck they do. But I'm told they come in and do just what they did with the gang enforcement team. These many gangs are operating, no paperwork, no data, just them talking to community members based on their own expertise, right? But I follow data, I follow facts, and I've got no facts since we've had this new team, except that they just started about a month or so ago, right? And they're taking credit for every arrest of a gun, but again, nothing in writing. So they come and just talk to people, just like the gang enforcement team used to do, just like the gun violence team used to do, right? And so for me, I expect the same outcomes since you have the same person training this new team of FIT folks. And when I said to the mayor, well, isn't he the same guy that ran the gun violence reduction? Oh, but he's a nice guy. Well, that may or may not be true. However common the outcome that he got with the gun violence reduction team does not give me confidence that we have the right person leading that team, right? And so the reality is that I believe police have been on strike since the summer of 2020. It hurt my heart to actually have to vote for a pay raise for people who I believe have not shown up and done their full public service. Because again, it's like, what are we building towards? And I actually want a police force that is responsive to all of us and that you don't have to wonder, if I call, will I die today? Or will my friend die? Or my neighbor die, right? I want to know that when we call a first responder, we're sending the right first responder to the right incident at the right time. Boom.
Ooh, exactly 3 minutes. Thank you. So and I appreciate you all for that answer. Even if I didn't agree with all of them, I appreciated the space. We're gonna go to the last part of our time together, which is our rapid fire. So you have 3 options. Can't say anything more than yes, no, or pass. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read the question, and then I'm gonna say your name, and that's when you respond. Okay? Got it. So. Okay, I'm gonna go to you first.
You doing one or all of them?
I'm gonna do one, and then I'm gonna say the question.
Okay.
Then I'm gonna say Chad.
Okay, good, gotcha.
Commissioner
All
Hardesty,
right.
Dale. Okay. Will you pledge to not take contributions from police, prison, incarceration industry, not to seek their endorsement, or to publicly reject their independent expenditures?
Yes.
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 Thank you. Do you support legislation eliminating both lethal force and non-lethal force in lethal ways on people exercising their First Amendment right? I'm gonna go you first.
Yes.
Dale?
Pass.
Yes.
Thank you. Third, I'm gonna hit you first, Dale. Wait a second. Do you support legislation to remove the shields of qualified immunity in Oregon?
No.
Chad?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Next one, do you support a ban on data sharing and all forms of collaboration between ICE and the City of Portland bureaus? I'm gonna go to you first. Chad?
I'm gonna pass with that.
Pass?
one.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. This one is gonna go to Commissioner Hardesty first. Do you pledge to oppose a city budget that expands in any way the capacity of the police force?
Pass.
Pass.
No.
Okay, let's keep going. I'm gonna go to you first, Dale. Do you support non-carceral justice strategies for community safety?
Absolutely yes.
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 Thank you. Do you support I'm gonna go to you first, Chad. Do you support zero tolerance legislation for police abuse of authority and abusive policing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And this one is going to go to you, Commissioner Hardesty. Do you support body-worn cameras as a tool when properly enforced to reduce misconduct and increase police accountability?
Yes, yes, yes.
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 Thank you. I'm going to go to you next, Dale. Do you believe the violations of property should never equate with the violation of human life?
Yes.
Chad?
I'm gonna pass that. I don't think I understand
Yes.
it.
Thank you. Only get 3 answers to say. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this one goes to, Commissioner Hardesty. Do you support putting an end to the use of military-style equipment, such as grenade launchers, long-range acoustic devices, and other technologies designed for warfare by the Portland Police Bureau?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Thank you. Final 2, let's go. I'm going to go to you first, Dale. Do you support the ban or the continuation of the ban of the facial recognition and predictive policing technology and other intrusive and discriminatory surveillance forms by the Portland Police Bureau?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And last one, I'm going to go to you first, Chad. Do you support the call to reimagine public safety and create a democratic community control over safety justice systems rooted in restoration and healing?
Yes.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy.
You.
You did wonderful.
Am I getting, okay, I'm gonna stop. Y'all,
Give me your love.
y'all are giving me love and I appreciate it, but that is all, folks. I do want to extend a special thank you for the folks who are watching this forum. It was a pleasure to spend time with you today. Thank you to Open Signal Labs, to our candidates, to the folks who participated, folks, our film crew, our volunteers, interpreters. I see you and I thank you. Ooh, yes, love. So I just want to remind folks, the city of Roses is full of thorns. It is beyond time we move towards a community safety that supports healthy, healed, and Black community. I'm Joy Elise Davis. It has been a pleasure spending time with y'all and being your moderator. I want to remind you that a new world is waiting and that all you have to do is help us build it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.